forecast for the week of November 4th, 2024. It's quite a week we have going. Up in the skies, it's pretty okay. Down here on Earth, I'm sure it's going to be quite the exciting time. I did my video last week about the U.S. election. Got a lot of watches on that. I got picked up net subscribers. Picked up net, I think 12 subscribers net. So welcome if you're a new subscriber. Of course, there were also a few people who decided to leave the channel, and that's certainly that's fine. I'll talk a little bit more about the election and stuff and the video and at the end of this. I want to talk about this week because there are things going on this week that are really worth paying attention to. I'm going to break with tradition and start doing the forecast on Saturday, November 2nd, rather than starting right away on November 4th. Well, that makes a lot of sense after all when you think about it. I mean, it's not like the planets are really going by a weekly schedule. Mars doesn't wake up on Monday morning and say, oh, what I got going on? Oh, I got to make people feel prickly on what. No, it's not like that. It's the aspects. They build, they culminate, they trail off. Sometimes they build quickly, sometimes they trail off slowly. It's all it varies. So there's an overlap. But this week, the overlap is we have to start the forecast someplace, though. We can't just have an ongoing rolling forecast. So I started on Mondays. Now, this week, we're going to start it back on Saturday. We're going to start it back on Saturday, November 2nd, because here's where we have some stuff going on. First of all, it is worth mentioning that Pluto will be squared by Juno, the partnership asteroid. Juno at the very, very end of Libra is squaring Pluto at the very, very end of Capricorn. Could be, for those of you in relationships that are at a tipping point, this could tip you. And then following the pattern, you've heard about the sun, you've heard about Mercury, you've heard about Venus, and now you're hearing about Juno. Afterwards, Juno goes into Scorpio, which is Pluto's sign. And so we have the sense of like, if we can pass the test on Saturday, then we get into that scorpionic mode, and maybe that sort of glues things together, or maybe that sort of pulls things apart. At any rate, if you're at a tipping point, keep in mind. For the rest of us, we have two aspects that are actually exact on Monday morning, but we'll be feeling them throughout the weekend as they build. And that is the opposition of Venus and Jupiter and the opposition of Mars and Pluto. So Venus and Jupiter, this is pretty cool. Venus, it's an opposition. It's technically a tense aspect. Mars, Pluto. It's technically a tense aspect, but Venus and Jupiter get along very well. Venus is in Jupiter's home sign of Sagittarius. It's pretty okay. The moon will be in Sagittarius for the better part of this weekend, really the entire weekend, and maybe early on Saturday. And so the moon lights this aspect up. Now we have this sort of good feeling between Venus and Jupiter's sign. They're both in dual signs. The twins of Gemini and Sagittarius is considered a dual sign, part human, part horse. And so the centaur. And so the idea behind this is that we have an abundance of things, an abundance of opportunities. And that's about the way I would see it playing out, especially with the moon in Sagittarius. It's this kind of, do you want to do this? Do you want to do that kind of thing? Lots of opportunities. The big tension between Venus and Jupiter would probably be deciding what it is you want to do. Again, the Sagittarius moon is keeping this all kind of buoyant all weekend long. That's okay. Mars is opposite Pluto, and they are at the very last degrees of Cancer and Capricorn. Now, Mars doesn't like being in Cancer very much, and Pluto, I don't really care where he is. To tell you the truth, he doesn't really care. He's not too happy anywhere, and he's not going to make, it doesn't really make that much of a difference. He is in Capricorn, which is Mars' favorite sign, directed energy. That's maybe the saving grace here. But the feeling is that this is a very different, instead of the too much of a good thing that Venus and Jupiter might be offering, Mars Pluto has a kind of contentious, scrappy kind of feeling to it. Undoubtedly going to play out in the collective, particularly if you're anywhere near the United States. If you're any anywhere between Canada and South America, you'll probably be hearing the screaming coming from us. On the collective level, individually, it depends how it hits your chart and how much you're going to be feeling this, but it is a very contentious kind of thing. Now, which of these two aspects, we have the happy aspect and we have the tense aspect, which is going to predominate? My guess is that through the weekend, it will actually be the Venus Jupiter energy that will be predominant. Oh, some of us will dial into the Mars Pluto thing, that's for sure. And it won't be entirely absent. We'll certainly be hearing it and seeing it, but it may not hit you exact. And don't forget, a really good aspect in the sky might hit your chart in a difficult way, and a tense aspect might wind up working things out nicely in your chart. It's not about, I don't want to say it's not about you. It's all about you, but it's not necessarily going to play out all about you as we go along. So basically, I'm saying that Venus Jupiter sort of wins the day on the weekend of the 2nd and 3rd as we get to the 4th. Then we get to the 4th, and we have the moon is still in Sagittarius, and Mars leaves Cancer for Leo. It's a pretty big shift. So Mars in Cancer is kind of this clannish, protective, traditional kind of energy. It's like protecting me and mine, protecting my family, protecting my clan, protecting my country, that type of thing. It's a little raw. It's a little raw type of energy. Um, I think about the Mel Gibson movie Braveheart. That's got a lot of that Mars and Cancer stuff going on in that kind of thing. Mars and Leo, on the other hand, now Mars goes from being the sort of the gruff warrior with the clan. This is like Mars puts on he is the cosmic warrior, so we're going to keep with that analogy there. Mars puts on his fine military dress type of thing, the hat that's nice and this and the medals on the corner, this type of thing. It's definitely a little bit more of a prideful show of force. There's your little keyword, a prideful show of force. I think about, you probably don't remember, back in the days of the Soviet Union, on May Day, they would always have these big parades when in the streets of Moscow they'd roll down the tanks and the missiles and all of that type of thing. And here we are. That's very Mars and Leo kind of thing. Not just them though. In the early part of the 20th century, Teddy Roosevelt had battleships built, and they had 18 battleships. 18, they were white at the time, white battleships, and they went big parade up the East Coast, and they sailed them around the world, telling everybody, here we are. I mean, Mars and Leo kind of stuff, we're prideful show of force. Of course, it doesn't play out just on that level. And Mars and Leo it also fires up our sense of drama, creativity, and playfulness. Mars and Leo is certainly it's a damn sight more romantic than Mars and Cancer. So, you got something going on in that department. There you go. Don't get too used to it though, because in December, Mars is going to stop to retrograde. He's already going pretty slowly. He's going to stop to retrograde in Leo, and he's going to go back into Cancer. He's sort of going back and forth between the two signs for a while. Wouldn't be really, it'll be the springtime before Mars is really cooking. His retrogrades last a long time. And so we're going to revisit this Cancerian energy, perhaps at inconvenient times. Also this week, my gosh. Also this week, on Monday, we have a trine between the Sun and Saturn. Sun-Saturn trines are great for building things, the sense of vitality and energy, which is the Sun, and structure, which is Saturn, are in harmony with each other. in the water signs of Scorpio and Pisces. I would say it more about favor creative projects, especially things that, expressing emotions and stuff like that. It's also it's a closing trine, so it's good for releasing stuff. Now, I know, all kinds of astrologers and YouTube metaphysicians are always talking about releasing things. If there's something you need to get rid of, I'm not talking about like, oh, release it. Really, just get rid of it. Just get rid of it. It might be a good opportunity to get rid of something you want to get rid of so that you, sun, can go ahead and do, what you're out there to do. Okay, so we've only got to Monday. Well, we backed up to the weekend. Tuesday, the moon goes into Capricorn and is going to eventually touch Pluto. And so here we have this kind of, especially it's election day in the US, and it really is bringing us back over the last 16 years since 2008, when Pluto's been in the sign of Capricorn, and reminding us of all the havoc he's wrought and how the institutions and faith in the institutions have been taken down in that course of time. And it is election day, and that's going to be a big day. As I said, we'll talk a little bit more about that towards the end. But the fact that the Capricorn energy predominates Tuesday, Wednesday into Thursday, it's sort of an indication, more or less an indication of revisiting. I feel we're sort of taking a step backwards. The moon's going forwards, but I feel like we're sort of taking a step backwards at this moment. Actually, with Pluto direct, we might not feel that way, except for the fact that he's been over this piece of territory quite a few times in recent years. I would guess that when we get towards the weekend, it's going to, there's contentious moments between the Tuesday and Friday. But I would take it that when the moon gets into Aquarius on the weekend, the earlier part of the weekend at any rate, there should be a little bit more of an upbeat kind of feel to things. I think that some of that Venus Jupiter energy will get kind of reheated, and even towards the back end of the weekend, I think that the Pisces moon will light up that Sun Saturn trine and sort of keep that energy going, that kind of constructive energy that if we don't do it as a collective, at least we can personally do it. So there's the outline of the week for you. Now, I didn't predict a winner of the election, and some people got pissed on. I said predictions for this. They didn't like that. That's okay. You don't have to like what I say. That's I'm not really here for that. My feelings, though, about this are that we are having this election at the very end of Capricorn, right? Just after the US Pluto return, 250 years, right? Just after the US Pluto return. And the moon is in Capricorn. Pluto is still in Capricorn. And we are still in that tear down mode. And I would judge that as troubling. I would judge that as troubling. And as we go forward, the energy is going to shift. It is going to shift into the Aquarian mode. As I tried to point out, Aquarius has some problems associated with it as well, and Pluto will bring those up. Mob rule is one. When I was giving examples of the Aquarian vibe, I was talking about things like labor unions and protests and stuff like that. To be honest with you, the January 6th insurrection was a Pluto in Aquarius moment. It was a mob, the masses, trying to take control, trying to take the power. It's a power to the people moment. They were misguided dumbasses, and in most times and places would have wound up with their back against the wall for that. But they, in their own mind, like just about everybody, they thought they were doing good. They thought they were doing good. So Pluto in Aquarius is not going to be, better than Pluto in Capricorn. That's, far from it. Pluto in Aquarius will bring up its own issues, but it'll bring up its own issues. And here's the rub. Here's the rub. The election is going to be very Pluto in Capricorn. It's Pluto still got 2 weeks in Capricorn. 2 weeks. He won't be back for 232 years, and he's on his last 2 weeks in the sign. Really, really making a point. He's really making a point. And we are going to dial into that. Now, here's what I think. I think that if Harris wins, I'm not saying her first name because people, don't understand about accents and things like that. So, if Harris wins, I think that it will be very, very difficult for her to get much done because I think that there's going to be a continued backlash. Right, I talked about this in the longer video. Continued backlash that Pluto in Capricorn is bringing up, but also the Regulus in Leo, and we all have Regulus in Leo. Donald Trump has it rising, but we all have it, and still trying to sort of regulate things. And so I think it's going to be pretty hard for her to push forward. On the other hand, I think if Trump wins, there's going to be buyer's remorse. I think we're going to say, ooh, that felt really good. That felt like a good decision. Well, some people are going to say it felt like a good decision with Pluto and Capricorn, but we're not really on that page anymore. And so I think we're headed for some trouble. Personally speaking, I don't, I grew up in the shadow of the Second World War, and I really think that the lessons that we learned about demagogues and folks who sway the masses should not have been lost as easily. But of course, time goes on and things fade back into history. And so we have somebody who's really out there for himself. And it doesn't matter what he says. It doesn't matter what his policies are. He's going to be popular. And I find that to be really, really disturbing. And I would just say that when you look at him, it's pretty obvious that the man has no heart. There's no heart in there. There is a lot of ego. There's an awful lot of determination. There's a certain amount of wit. He's a Gemini and he's from New York after all. But there's no heart. There's no heart. It's all about him. It's all about him. I wouldn't trust him with my cat for a weekend, let alone, well, I wouldn't trust many people with a cat for the weekend, but there's no heart going on over there. And it's deeply, deeply disturbing. It's not the policies, although the policies, it's just this person who's there for themselves. And that so many people are just ready to dial into that. And you probably, not you, but you probably are one. And so I lose subscribers and I really don't care.